'Cause I can fly, I can fly, I can fly. I'm crawling around, searching for higher ground. Can't see in front of me, my enemies. I've tried every possibility, ability to know if I can bleed. If that's what you wanted, you won't get it tonight. 'Cause I can fly, I can fly, I can fly, I can fly. I'm crawling around, searching for higher ground. Can't see in front of me, my enemies. I've tried every possibility, ability to know if I can bleed. If that's what you wanted, you won't get it tonight. 'Cause I can fly, I can fly, I can fly, I can fly.
I'm from Ad Standards, and for over 60 years, we've been all about doing the right thing. It's like holding the door open for someone with crutches, or someone carrying a lot of pizzas, or that sweet old lady that you see all the time. You're welcome, Mrs. Donovan. That's what we call doing the right thing. And that's pretty much what we do over at Ad Standards, by helping ensure all advertising is truthful, fair, and accurate.
So we're live now. Thank you guys for joining us. We want to start off this panel. This is the 6 months to 5 years industry experience, and I think it'll be probably the most relevant to most of our viewers. If you could start off by introducing yourself and how you got into the industry.
Okay, so my name's Greg, and I'm a business development manager at Juniper Park, TBWA. And the way I got into the industry was really just badgering people who I knew in the industry. But it really started with networking. I started talking to someone who knew someone else who worked at an agency, made the connection, go down the wormhole, connect with other people, and eventually got to someone who was hiring. And then just following up, staying consistent, because I know these people can get busy and they cannot return your emails, which is understandable. So just badgering, following up, sharing your interest. And then eventually it led to a position in account service. That's where I started. So. Oh,
how did you move from account services to business development?
It was kind of luck of the draw, an opportunity that came up. I've always had an interest in that side of the business. Really interested in seeing how the agency operates, how you win new business, pitch new clients. So when the opportunity came up, it was something that I pursued because I thought it would be good at it, and I thought it would really be kind of vault myself into the next stage of my career. So it's just something that I came across and went after. But that's not to say that I didn't like account service as well. I thought that was a great starting point, and I think that it's a great place to build skills and even go further into your career. And it's not to discourage people in account service at all, because it definitely has a strong place in the industry.
Definitely. Robin, what about you?
Sure. So I work at MediaCom on the client service team. I've been there for almost 3 years now. I actually got into the industry kind of by accident. I initially went to college for arts, and then somehow just ended up in an advertising program. From there, I went into sales, and similar to you, wasn't exactly my strong suit or something that I enjoyed. So from there, I transitioned into media buying and planning. And yeah, it's been a great time.
And you've been at MediaCom the entire time?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Kim, what about you?
So I work at PhD, which is a media agency. I started as a digital media assistant and then moved to an account supervisor on the client service role. Got into the industry also by accident. I was in business at school, and then just started to reach out to my sister-in-law who worked at a creative agency and was like, how do I get into this world of marketing? I was from a really small town, so I was like, whatever I can do to not end up there and be in Toronto was what I wanted to do. So kind of fell in, and yeah, I've been there ever since and love it.
Great. Darren?
I'm an account manager. I work at Mosaic, and I work in experiential marketing, so a little bit different, but I got in the industry kind of similar way, but I was a brand ambassador at first, didn't really know much about the agency world, but I was a brand ambassador for about a year, and then just kind of worked my way in, kind of skipped a few normal processes of having to apply and stuff, but yeah, I just really enjoy it, so client service as well.
Allie?
I have been an account executive at McCann now for actually just a hot minute. Previously, I was at a boutique firm, so that's definitely been an interesting transition. And much like everyone here, it was kind of accidental. I was actually in the process of applying to different master's programs, and I was just talking to friends, and they were already in the industry, and we were talking about what kind of, I was driven to buy or to, and it was generally communication, working with people, and tapping into the pulse, like what's going on now, what's topical, what's relevant, what's current, and they were like, you should apply to different advertising jobs, and that's how I ended up here.
I wonder if you could speak about the difference in working at a small agency versus a larger one.
Oh my goodness. Well, I transitioned from a place run by a very passionate group of 25 people. Now McCann has 600 employees just across Canada. Obviously a learning curve, as far as just knowing people's names and knowing who to reach out to, because there's just a lot more segmentation. But I think the common thread is actually that there's no less expertise. That's kind of what I thought. I thought, oh, everyone will be so niche at a huge agency. It's not the case. They all come from diverse backgrounds like this. But honestly, just the scope of the work is probably the biggest difference. Yeah.
I was wondering if, in the next question, if we could discuss how the industry changes so rapidly, and if you could talk about how much it's changed in the time you've been in it.
For me, I think that it's changing every day. I haven't seen like a monumental change since I started, but there's definitely on a daily basis you're seeing more and more of the horror stories that you hear about, and I think there'll be more in the future. So, for instance, the big buzzword story that came up, I don't know, a couple of months ago was the Pepsi Kendall Jenner ad, of course, clients taking their business in-house. That's a big one that we've noticed across the industry, and it's something that's becoming more popular, obviously, as brands continue to try and save money. So I think that's one you really, as agencies, we really need to value the clients that we already have and make sure that we're paying them the attention that they're due on an account service basis, just to keep them, because they're so valuable, and especially in Canada because there aren't as many massive.
We're a much smaller market.
Yes, definitely when compared to New York or LA. So I'd say that's the biggest one that I've seen recently.
Okay. What about you, Robin?
So within the 3 years that I've been at my agency, there's been a couple changes. So to your point, there is definitely a breadth of knowledge that everyone is expected to have, but there is also different roles and responsibilities and teams forming within larger agencies, especially with those specialist teams for the ever-growing amount of platforms and systems that we have. Another big change is the kind of the interagency teams that we work with. So when I first started, we kind of worked in silos, but as the world is changing and consumers are consuming media more and more and more, definitely need to work super closely with all the agency partners, creative, in-store, PR, super close to make a 360 program.
Collaboration is definitely key between
Absolutely.
all the different agency partners. Kim?
Yeah, I'm kind of on that point, but I think like the agency model is changing, like especially within the media world. But we have different divisions in our agency now. Like we have a whole marketing science team, which didn't exist when I first started, and it's with the depth of data that's like in the world now. And like there's so much data that you have to do something with, and you have to have people analyze it and make sense of it, and relay that to your creative partners and to your clients so that they can make insights off of it, which is so new. And I think, also when I started, and a big change is obviously social. Like we had one person when I started, now we have like 25 people that just run social accounts. So like, I think like just things that change like so rapidly, like within 3 years, we have 2 new departments within our agency that never existed before.
Rob? Darren? Sorry, apologies.
Kind of the same thing. It's two big things for me. One is internal services, working with different teams, and really having a whole collaborative approach to returning on a brief. But then in the experiential world in general, a big focus has gone from just doing an event to just do an event and have the people there, to really making it accessible to people all across Canada, all across even the world at times. But I know Canada is a little bit smaller scale, so not often. But and then really taking those events and actually making a content factory out of them, and shooting content there, using it in different forms of marketing and advertising going forward. So really stretching those dollars as far as they can possibly go.
Do you find that clients are demanding more?
Always. Yeah, it's not. I don't think that they're necessarily demanding more in terms of physical, what they're expecting to see, but in terms of results, I feel that just reaching the Toronto market itself is not enough anymore. You have to be able to reach everybody, no matter what, even if the event is just in Toronto. So,
what about you, Allie?
I feel like it's actually, to build on what you're saying, that's a really good point. It's not enough just to reach your immediate area, but also I think the role of the agency is changing in that you're always meant to be a steward, obviously. Better process, better practice, better results, but to make sure that it's also relevant to an increasingly wide audience, because you can't just spit something out and make sure that it goes, the extra 3,000 kilometers. It also has to mean something to the people that are still there. And I guess that probably plays into what you were saying a little bit about the different departments working together and just needing that, intensive collaboration to make it work and make it relevant for more people.
A large part of agency work is managing client relationships, even if you're not in accounts, whether you're, business development or creative or strategy. Perhaps can you talk about how you approach that and how that's changed from when you began to where you are now? So let's start with you, Greg.
I think that the first thing that goes wrong with clients is related to the client management, so that the client management always has to be a fundamental part of your business, no matter what. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that when things get really busy and when things start to go awry. However, I think that the way that we manage the client has changed in the sense that you have to be that much more locked down with your processes and with the way that you manage their business, because costs have become such a focus. And I think that since 2008, and there's been a lot of consolidation among agencies and clients. Budgets have continued to get tighter, so people are continuously evaluating what the value of their dollar is, and if it becomes too inflated on an agency side, you risk threatening the client relationship. So I just think that everything needs to be locked down. You need to cut excess, and you really need to pay attention to what they actually want and not what you think they want. Ask questions. We do this in business development a lot. What are they actually asking? Go back to the brief. What is the actual mandate, as opposed to, because you can get sidetracked so easily.
Yeah.
So really listening to the client and focusing on what their needs are.
Great. Robin?
Yeah, and sometimes what they think they want isn't what they actually want. So you have to work with them to figure that out. But yeah, I've been really lucky and got some really awesome clients, and absolutely the fundamentals is getting the basics right, because if the foundation is wrong, then everything else is going to go askew. But I think, and it's such a buzzword, but transparency is absolutely the number one thing. Giving them insight into everything that you're doing. If you make a mistake, just own it, because it can be fixed. I mean, it's just advertising. Like, you're not saving lives. It's okay. You can make mistakes. But yeah, I think transparency and getting the basics right. Absolutely.
Kim?
Yeah, I think education and trust is a big part of it too. Like, I think, we work in a world of media, which there's lots of nuances and things are changing. So making sure that you educate them so that they understand what you're talking about, it goes a long way to make sure that, when you're delivering plans and talking about, what's going on with the reports and stuff, is that they understand so they can ask questions and they feel that trust and they know what's going on. So I think education is a big part of it too.
Darren?
When you're speaking about financials, I think a big piece is treating their dollars as if they're your own, really stretching them and making sure that you're using them in the correct way to answer the brief properly. And like you said, they might not know exactly what they want all the time, but helping them understand that. But the big thing for me has been trying to really create a partnership versus a client and agency perspective. If it's more of a partner relationship, everybody has the same goals. We're not fighting you to steal your money or anything like that. It's we're on the same team, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make your help you achieve your goals, basically.
Ellie?
Yeah, and I think that kind of all of those things are just so intrinsically linked. Like, you can't have good communication without transparency, without educating people about what you're talking about. And another huge part of that is being informed about what you're selling too, right? We have so much to learn from our clients before we can make informed suggestions. So that partnership, I feel like, is just made possible by all these things these smart people just mentioned. I gotta go last. It's absolutely brutal.
Well, let's have you go first this time.
Nope, just kidding. I'm happy with the order.
So, obviously a lot of students and people who want to come into the industry are viewing this. And I was wondering if you could speak to how the reality was versus your expectations, or I guess the fantasy of what it would be like to work in the industry. And if you could talk about that. Let's start with you again, Greg.
Sure. I think when I was coming into the industry, Mad Men was obviously on TV and a huge hit. Yeah. So there's like all kinds of Mad Men fantasies, right? And then people warn you, well, it's nothing like Mad Men. It's like a little. It's like a little like Mad Men. It's not a lot, but you get the characters. But what I would say is that it's so competitive when you're trying to enter the industry. And when I started applying to jobs, it was like, okay, I'm gonna latch on somewhere by putting up my resume online, and I'm gonna, someone's gonna read it, someone's gonna like me, I'm gonna interview, I'm gonna start. Well, that wasn't necessarily enough. So I think that was a a dark reality is that, like, you know, your resume submissions aren't getting answered. So that's why I would say, I would stress, like, you need to meet people, and then you need to connect with people and make further connections. And that's not only going to help you get into the industry and help you get a job, it's also going to help you, like, inform your perspective, learn from those people, and don't just, like, shake their hand and ask for their contact information. Learn from them, ask them questions, and really get to know the landscape, because it's complicated. It's changing, like we mentioned, and there's a lot to get to know that you won't know until you're inside. So the more you know ahead of time, the better you're going to be prepared to enter.
Robin?
Yeah, I went to the advertising course at Sheridan, and the way they had it was like each class was a different section. So it was a sales class, client management, creative, whatever. And I hated the media buying class, but here I am. So it's so different. And it definitely doesn't work in silos. Like, there's aspects of sales and client management that you weave, and creative, like everything works together. It's definitely not just, you know, one class is one job. So, and there's different aspects that, you know, will translate and different ones that won't. So it's, I think a lot of us, just based on the fact we got into the industry by accident, you really have to just experience it, find out what you like, find out what you don't like, and learn from that.
Kim?
Yeah, and like I think building on that is like there's so many different disciplines within the industry. Like there's different disciplines within the creative shop or the media shop. So I think giving it a shot and like really trying to meet a lot of people within just one agency, you'll realize there's so many different jobs within one place, and not to cut like, you know, media right off because you did one course at college, university, you didn't like it. Like it's really fascinating as how much like breadth and depth there is to the advertising space.
Yeah,
Darren?
again, just be open. Be open to opportunities. Take advantage of the people you meet. And then the other thing is don't be set on one major goal. Like, the agency world is a great place to learn, and, you know, if you want to work for that big sports team or something like that down the line, it's a great training ground to get really solid processes down and just understand the industry as a whole before you jump into that step.
Allie?
I guess I feel like the thing that I think is, not that I had illusions about this necessarily, but that is maybe different from other kind of like traditional applied jobs or something like that, is that there's always going to be a learning curve, particularly because it's always changing. So even if you decide to go into media buying and then you learn that and you feel amazing about it and you're running with it for 2 years, at the end of the 2 years, if you're feeling comfortable, it's probably because there's like something you don't know. There's another opportunity to learn. There's always something that you can do or take on, because, you know, that's the nature of this job, is that we're responding to changing climate, politically, socially, culturally, economically, huge too, obviously.
On that note, you know, there is constant change, obviously, not just in the industry, but in the wider culture and consumer behavior. How do you stay up to date? Like, what resources are you looking at? You know, how do you make sure that you're on top of everything? That's true. Twitter is a great tool to see what's going on and what people are thinking. Greg?
I think first and foremost, as people who work in advertising, you have to be informed citizens. You've got to follow with what's going on in the world. That includes like how people consume media, how people act in public. Because if you're not informed, I don't think that you have the ability to reach the people who are informed, because you're not communicating in the same circles. Do you know what I mean? If you're talking about something that happened a month ago, probably not, you know, relevant anymore to those circles, because it's not the buzz anymore. And so much of what we do is based on now. And even like 24 hours makes a huge difference in things that are trending. So be an informed citizen first. Be someone who's curious. Be someone who's always on the lookout for new trends and new happenings. Read that weird article that you never thought you'd pick up. And I think that way you'll stay in the know and good at your job.
Great. Robin?
Yeah, I mean, like, just be passionate about what you're doing. Like, this is your career. This is what you're being paid to do, and it's what you should be passionate about doing. So, like, read articles, subscribe to different subscription emails. If you work at a big agency, sometimes you get, like, specific research departments that are constantly looking up these trends. We have a great social team that sends out constant updates on what's happening on, like, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. So just be passionate and seek out the information rather than wait for it to come to you.
Kim?
Yeah, and I think a big part of this job is curiosity. Like, you have to be curious to be in this industry, because things are always changing, and there isn't, like, you know, the article ready for you to learn. Like, you kind of have to dig it out, and subscribing to like the emails and working at a big agency, you kind of get access to it. But just being curious in general is going to help you, because you're just going to seek out that information on that way.
Darren?
Yeah, and I just say follow brands, follow agencies, follow companies on social, and you'll get a good idea of what they're doing and some different trends that are going on in the industry, because everybody wants to share online, so you're going to find it there.
Ellie, do you have anything else?
You know what? All of those that make total sense and are so true, but also talk to people in your life.
Yeah.
Talk to them about what they use, their user experience on websites, on social, whatever it is that they're using, what they like to read, where they read it, why they seek it out, or how it comes to them. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you can be ahead of the curve, but you have to know where everybody is. Because there's a spectrum of, you know, media consumption and advertising consumption and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's the challenge in, you know, making sure that you are on trend, but also knowledgeable of what the mass majority of consumers are doing. You know, if you're on trend, you're going to reach the trendsetters, and then those trends will then go down to the consumer, but the mainstream consumer behavior is slightly different. So, you know, one thing that I usually like to do is I like to go to different places and just observe what people are doing, and you get so much insight from that. Last question. What advice would you give to someone trying to get into the industry right now?
I would say if you're trying to break into the industry, put all of your might into it, and don't do it because you might like it or you're kind of feeling it out. If you want to get in, do it, get in with all of your effort, and say you put all of your effort forward for 4 months. Maybe that's just a random timeline. But if you do that and you find out it's not working, you maybe don't like it, you find something that it's turned you off, okay, move on to the next thing. But don't go kind of with half of your effort, because I think it's a losing battle. You'll have a hard time breaking through if you're not going full bore.
Robin?
Yeah, kind of in that similar thought, like be passionate. Like that's my number one thing for anyone that comes in and I have to train or whatever. It's be passionate, keep an open mind, ask questions, like never assume you know anything, because it's always better to ask a question and find out, because especially if you're new, people aren't expecting you to know things, so it's totally okay to ask questions and get those answers.
Kim?
Yeah, I think like your willingness to learn, like when you're like in an interview or you get that opportunity, it's like you're just a sponge for the first year. Like you really don't know anything. And I mean, we work in an industry where like we talk in acronyms, so for like the first month and a half, you just write down definitions.
Yeah.
And Google them because you don't know what anyone's talking about, but it's not a bad thing. And you learn so quickly that I think if you can just be open in an interview to say like you're just willing to learn and that you have the ability to learn, that you'll make it, because it's all about just being that sponge.
Darren?
For me, it's find resources through networking and all that kind of stuff, and actually use them. I didn't do enough of this when I was in school. I had some really great resources, and I didn't follow up enough, and I didn't go on those info meetings and stuff like that. And to me, that's absolutely key, because a lot of the times your next job is just going to be from someone you know versus, like you said, applying online. So.
Ellie?
Yeah, go for the coffee with the person who offers. That is my biggest regret, or so many of those same situations where somebody had so much knowledge and they had a great job and they were willing to sit down with me, and I didn't do it because you were busy with school or you have exams, and there's always a million reasons not to do it. But yeah, exactly. Or you wanted to go to the movies, whatever. I don't know. But yeah, talk to those people, even if you're intimidated because you think they're professional. What could I possibly even ask them that would be a good question? Them anything. And they're going to ask you questions. They work in this field. They know that you don't know anything, and that's okay. They might just be like, what are you interested in? And then you can ramble something out, and they'll probably draw it out of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Just to play off that, I'd say like generally if someone offers, they're willing to answer anything.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, like Kim said, totally, absolutely go take it.
I think too, like we've all kind of been there, so we're all willing to take that coffee because we've all been in that instance. So it's like if you reach out, someone's probably going to answer your call to meet for coffee.
Yeah, it's not like an interview. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. These people are busy,
Yeah, it's not going to take forever.
No.
And just make sure you put yourself out there and make connections.
Totally.
So we have a couple minutes, and I was wondering if maybe you could each talk about a piece of work that you're really proud of.
That wasn't on the list.
Surprise question.
I think that I have like a kind of it's not a one big project that I'm really proud of, but at my last job when I was working in account service, we opened a new social channel for our client, and we really dedicated ourselves to building a social strategy from the ground up, and really building that cadence and building really complex, layered, quality assets for their social channel to help build their bigger brand profile and build them as like that premium brand. And I was really proud of that by the end, and as I continued to work on it, because I think that a lot of what we see on social networks from brands can be really bad. Brands just kind of being there for the sake of being there. So for my team and I to put all we had into it and to really build something that we could feel proud of on a social channel, I don't know if anybody liked it. People were liking it, but that doesn't mean anything. But I felt good that we were doing that because I thought we were making a difference for the client in just helping build up the image of their brand.
Okay.
I'm going to get really campaign specific. So in 2015, we did a Skittles pawn shop, which was a hugely successful campaign. Went to Cannes, won a Bronze Lion, and I didn't work on it. I got to work on the second iteration, so I got to follow up to that amazing campaign that won a Cannes Lion. And it was a huge amount of stress. I was just over a year into the industry, and I was still figuring things out, and I got tasked with leading this program. But it went really, really well. It delivered on all the KPIs, increased impressions. It was amazing. And it was really cool to follow up in such a big campaign.
Kim?
Yeah, I think I work on Tangerine, and I've worked on it since day one that I pretty much started at the agency, and they're a challenger brand going after the big five, which is really hard to do because they're so established. But I think, you know, we've taken their media spend and what they've done in the market and their unaided awareness from, like, I don't want to say numbers, but from not a lot to a lot. And, you know, I just every day, like, they're challenging, but they're super rewarding, and like they're definitely taking on the market, which is fun to work on.
Darren?
Mine's a launch for a video game that I did. It was the first event that I kind of took reins of myself. Wasn't the most successful one we ever had, but it was special to me because it was my first time that I was fully responsible for everything, and everything that went wrong was fully my fault, so that was good. But no, lots of learnings, and I think that really kind of gave me a lot of confidence going forward.
Allie?
This doesn't sound very impressive when I say it like this, but we had a client who was an industry leader in everything except their website. And the website was so underwhelming that it was an impediment to their business, and not just online, everywhere. But this is probably more not of the piece of work that I'm so proud of, but the first time that I really felt that client recognition of, we did this and we did it together. It was a huge process. I don't know if you know a ton about websites, but most of them don't take a year to build.
No, they take more, yeah.
Like, this was just such a long, drawn-out process, but at the end of it, they knew how to use it. It worked, you know, in most of the ways that they wanted it to. Obviously, there had to be some compromises along the way, but that first time that you see someone say, like, thank you so much, this is what we wanted, we feel now like this reflects our business.
That's great. Thank you, all of you, for coming here and sharing your insights with everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm from ASC, Advertising Standards Canada. But you can now call us Ad Standards. That's what we're going by from this day forward. This was our old logo, and this is our new one. Welcome to our 2-ish minute video about who we are and what we do. So, what is Ad Standards? For over 60 years, we've been an independent, not-for-profit advertising industry body that helps ensure all advertising across all media is truthful, fair, and accurate. In 1963, we created the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards. The code, as we like to call it, not only applies to TV, print, and radio advertising, but all outdoor and online advertising too. Online advertising? What is that? Within the code, there are 14 clauses that set the criteria for acceptable advertising in Canada. Without getting into the messy details, it is unacceptable if an ad is not truthful, fair, or accurate.
So, if you see or hear an ad that you believe is misleading or not delivering on the claim that it's making, or providing incorrect or inadequate information, complaints can be submitted using our online complaint submission form. All complaints are reviewed based on criteria set out in the code. If an ad is found to not meet those standards, we ask the advertiser to fix its ad or withdraw it. We also offer a pre-clearance service in 5 regulated categories: children's advertising, food and non-alcoholic beverages, alcoholic beverages, consumer drugs, and cosmetics. We will review ad copy in these categories to ensure that legislative, regulatory, and other requirements are met. And for Ad Standards members, we offer an advisory service that helps keep consumer complaints at bay by helping ensure their ad copy adheres to all clauses in the code.
Oh, 60 years looks really good on me. To put it simply, Ad Standards helps advertisers stay in good standing with Canadian consumers and regulators. So that about sums it up. Ad Standards is committed to doing the right thing for both Canadian consumers and the advertising industry, because truth in advertising matters. To learn more, please visit adstandards.ca. Truth in advertising for over 60 years. Our new logo looks even better in color.
So we're now going to be starting with the second panel of the day. This is the 5 to 10 year experience. And if you could just go around and talk about who you are and how you got into the industry. We'll start with Julie.
Great. So I'm Julia Forrester. I'm a writer at TBWA at Juniper Park here in Toronto. And I started at TBWA. We've merged now. So I've been at the same agency my whole career since I was an intern, although it's felt kind of like two, which was like a nice little shake-up in the middle. But I got into the industry. It's something I was always interested in. But when I was looking in high school and didn't really know much about the industry, all I saw for advertising was graphic design programs, which is definitely not my strong suit. So I just kind of wrote it off. And I went to school for French and was actually working as a translator because I knew writing was always something I was interested in. And then I found the Humber College program that was specifically copywriting for advertising. And I think I applied the day that I saw it because I was like, that's the thing. And it was great because it was just an 8-month program for people who had already been through school. It was kind of like an advertising boot camp, portfolio boot camp, and got lots of great connections to meet people. And from there, right into my internship. And yeah, since then, it was kind of a roundabout way in. But once I got there, I knew it was where I wanted to be.
Now, you've been there for how many years now?
Over 5, about 6 now.
That's pretty long in the industry.
It is. It definitely is. But it's been interesting. So we had previously at TBWA, we had like a great smaller team. Then we merged, which meant whole new team to work with, whole new team of clients. So that was, you know, we had to get our bearings at the beginning, but it opened up a lot of really great opportunities. And even that, since then, there's been different things like new clients coming on board, different creative leaders. So it's sort of always felt fresh, and there was always something new on the horizon. So it's been really great. But in the meantime, too, you know, everything moves around so quickly. Even though I've stayed in the same place, people who I've worked with are all over the place. So I have gotten to know people all over the industry, which is a really fun way to get to know through friends and former colleagues.
Amanda?
So I'm Amanda Hill, and I'm the account manager at Mediacom on the client service team. And I mean, I feel like similar to probably everybody else, just kind of fell into the industry. I went to university for business and did a marketing program, but had no real idea of what advertising all entailed, what it was. And when I graduated, you know, just kind of trying to find a job. I knew I wanted to come to Toronto and got an interview at an agency. Didn't really know what to expect, but ended up getting the job and have been working ever since. So,
Did you start off at Mediacom?
I did not start off at Mediacom. I've been to a couple different places. Fairly new at Mediacom, still under a year there. So, but it's good. It's nice to see different perspectives from some different agencies.
Did you start off in media or in a different area?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, yeah. So I've been in media, planning and buying since I've started.
What about you, Alison?
Hi, I'm Allison Maselli. I'm an account supervisor at Diamond Integrated Marketing, which is an independent shop in the city. I can quite confidently say I didn't fall into the industry. I knew pretty early on in high school that I wanted to be in advertising. I had actually applied to go to school for both business and photography. My dad had asked me to be practical I had been shortlisted at Ryerson for photography, so I went to Mac for commerce. I couldn't get into the industry right out of school, so I actually worked in e-com for a year in user experience and product design. And then through networking, as I think we've all been experienced with, I was part of a program called Next Gen Dinner Series that Ad Lounge runs, and I met some key people at JWT and actually accepted an internship there, sort of as like a 2-month summer boot camp to get into the industry. And then have sort of worked my way in and been a few years agency side. I actually briefly returned to brand side a few years ago to help Holt Renfrew launch their e-com site. I was the digital marketing manager there, and then have made my return to home just under a year ago at Diamond, where I'm working to help lead the digital and social business for TD.
Could you talk a bit about the differences being on client side versus being on the agency?
Yeah, it definitely depends on where you are. I think being client side, sometimes people feel like they have a bit more control because you're the ones who are briefing, you're the ones who hold the purse strings. But I definitely like being agency side a lot more because I have an appreciation, which I think a lot of people spoke to who were on the first panel, is that strategic mindset. And I definitely think you leverage those skill sets a lot more when you're the one receiving the brief and then you are essentially the problem solver. So that would be the main difference, but definitely have tried out both. But I do think as an accounts person, having been client side, you have a very different appreciation for your clients because you have been the client and you know how you would like to be serviced, having been on the other side of the fence.
Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah McAlpine. I'm in an account management role at a creative agency. So I definitely didn't take a linear path to my current role now. I was always eager to experience different roles in different agencies in all areas. So after I graduated from the MIT program at Western, I did a post-grad program in PR. So my first role was in publicity within a small publicity team. And from there, I was connected to their media agency. So then I did media planning and buying for a couple of years at MediaCom. Networking people. And then from there, I really wanted to get into creative and production. So I've been in my role now at a creative agency for about 4 years.
Can you discuss how you went from PR to media? That's quite the jump.
Yeah, so I did my internship actually at Universal Music with the publicity team. And from there, it was a very small publicity team. I mean, music is such a fun industry. It was such a great experience, but they had a large marketing and media team as well. So MediaCom at the time was one of their clients.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And so then media to production.
Yeah.
Can you discuss that?
Yeah, so when I was at MediaCom, I was in a digital role. So it was buying and strategy. And so a lot of the time when you're trafficking out digital banners, you look at the creative. And it's not exactly our role to, give feedback and judge a creative. So I was looking at all this digital videos and the creative, and I'm like, this is where I belong. Like, this is where I want to be, right? So that's how I ended up at a creative agency.
Do you think you could mention or discuss how all these different roles have helped you in the current role you are at?
I mean, well, exactly, and it truly does. It's just having an understanding of like the bigger picture and learning and knowing how important it is to understand the media space. I think that was huge. And understanding analytics and data and needing to know delivery and performance to make the next round of creative. So it's also important just having that background and understanding. I think media was huge.
And I think your experience also speaks to the fact that, often students are dead set on, I want to do this or I want to do that. But really, there are many opportunities to be able to go into different areas in agencies and experience different roles. And, sometimes you just have to be open to it and realize the connections that there are between different areas and roles that you can do. Emily, what about you?
So I'm Emily, and I work at Mosaic. I'm an account manager there. And I actually came upon the industry rather accidentally. I was doing a communications degree and decided that it wasn't for me. So I left university and was just trying to pick up any job I could. And one of my first jobs was as a brand ambassador at Mosaic. And that day doing one of my activations, a manager came out and asked me, what did I want to do with my career? And 3 months later was, an entry-level manager at Mosaic, and 9 years later I'm still there.
Now, you've been there for quite a long time, which is quite unusual in this industry. Yeah. I was wondering if you could speak about, what has led you to stay?
I think it's just a sense of community. You know, Mosaic has this amazing ability to feel like family. And, you know, when you're in a job working the hours that we tend to do in this industry, you know, your job has to be someplace you love to be. And I think for me, that's Mosaic, and it's the sense of family, and they really allow you to, you know, grow over time and support you in whatever career path you're looking for.
Obviously, you've all been in the industry for a while. I was wondering if you could speak about how you've felt and experienced the industry change from the beginning of your career to where you are now. Let's start with Julia.
I think one of the things that's definitely changed, even over the last 5 or 6 years, is the pace of things. I know when I started, digital certainly was a thing, but it wasn't the way it is now. Social media existed, but we were making things like single posts and timeline covers. And now it's, if there's something out there, like a trend that you want to be a part of, you have to be a part of it that day, because the next day something else will be out there. So that's definitely upped the ante and really changed the way some of the processes work, because you don't have time necessarily for timelines that are months long for some projects. So that's something that's constantly changing, and it's really interesting to see where it goes, because sometimes you wonder, you know, is it sustainable, or can we build things that can keep up with that? But being flexible definitely helps. I mean, that'll help in any career, but in this career, it's like very, very important. And just rolling with things as they go. So being part of a team that's really willing to see things how they work and change and adapt as they go is really important now more than ever.
Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of building off of that, it's like the way people are consuming media is changing. So from a paid media standpoint, it's how do we evolve the strategy, how are clients' objectives changing, even thinking of like social media. How you approach social media when I first started is completely different in terms of how we approach it now. And so it's, you know, continually having to evolve and grow with that, and understanding how, you know, your clients' objectives are going to change. I mean, I think the way you thought about media, even when I first started, you know, 6-7 years ago, is completely different on how we think about it now, and how the whole, how everything works together. And it's not just thinking of it in silos anymore, like media and PR and, you know, creative. It's how can everything work together to really build the strongest platform for your clients and your brands.
Allison?
I have a couple of things. I definitely agree we don't have the luxury of time anymore, and I definitely feel that the agencies and the partners who will succeed now and in the next 5 years are the ones who adapt to change, adapt to the timing constraints, and make it work. It's just, with social and digital, things move very quickly, and it's an adaptation process, and you will adapt or likely die. I think that's a very like blunt way of putting it, but it's happening now. The second thing is definitely transparency. We've seen a lot of articles in the past year, especially looking at P&G's recent example, where they're asking for that data transparency. So laddering back to the first group, talking about that trust and always having that level of trust, whether it's, you know, being transparent about the data or sending articles when you find them of things that should be top of mind for client, and building that collaborative, informative partnership. And I think the third thing, which speaks to both of your points, is this whole concept of being agile and leveraging data. So as we continue to see digital and social evolve, it's this idea of not just creating content for now, but creating content that we can then look at the data a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in market, and work with our clients to continually ensure we're not only on pace, but continuing to exceed pace by working together collaboratively, media, PR, and agency, to adapt the creative while it's live in market.
Sarah?
So one of the biggest changes I think that is affecting me and my current client, a few of them, are millennials. I'm one of them, and cable cutters. So growing off of what the girls are saying, it's changing the way media is being purchased. Clients that traditionally spent 90% of their media budgets on broadcast can't do that anymore, as millennials are their targets. So everything is going mobile, and it's just constantly educating our clients and gaining their trust, and it's changed, and they don't like change, and it's showing the facts and the data that supports how we need to communicate to their target. So it's huge, but it's exciting, and we are millennials, so we're causing the change. Go us.
Emily?
Yeah, I think kind of to build on everyone's points, you know, the integration is so important. If I look back to even 4 or 5 years ago, that was not the number one priority in receiving any sort of brief. And now it is top of mind for everyone, making sure that you're looking at programs holistically and strategy. And everyone used to come in with asking for like this big creative idea, and now it's more tactical and like how we're going to see those immediate results, and where we, to your point, looking at the data to make sure that the programs are successful and make sense.
Speaking of clients, I was wondering if you could talk about what your approach to maintaining good client relationships are and how that's changed throughout your career. We'll start with Julia.
So I was really lucky as a young creative just starting out as an intern that I actually did get a lot of client-facing time at my agency, which I really appreciated, and I think has been one of the biggest step-ups in my career, because it's really great to be in the room when your work is being presented, to hear feedback firsthand, and just to have that dialogue and have that sort of even face-to-face recognition. It's a lot different. I obviously lean really hard on the account teams where I work to keep up those day-to-day relationships, but it's been really nice to be a close-knit part of those teams. And I'd suggest any creative starting out to really look for those opportunities to be involved. Definitely working on your presentation skills is one thing. Working on just your, interpersonal dialogue, things like that is great. But whenever those opportunities come up, I would say to grab them, because it's really helped over the years. It helps you build that trust. It helps you sell your own work, despite the fact that you have a great team supporting you. Sometimes it's really great. I mean, when you work on something for so long, you feel a certain amount of passion for it. You've been behind it maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks before the other people on your team, and you know it inside and out. So it's really great to be able to have that opportunity and help really great things happen, and just establish that trust not only with your agency as a whole, but also with yourself as a person.
In terms of creative, I was wondering if you could talk about, often when you have the initial creative idea, it becomes your baby. And sometimes it can be hard to move from that if it's not working, move to different ideas. And I was wondering if you could talk about how you handle that.
Yeah, it definitely is an interesting thing, because a lot of the work that you do as a creative, as an agency in general, but especially like my notebook is full of stuff that goes nowhere. So like I'll work 8 hours a day and then present those either to my partner, she might not like them, to my creative director, they might not like them, and then it goes through the account team, through the clients. So you do definitely have to have, part of it is a thick skin, but part of it is also just a business sense. I mean, you are there to be creative, but you're really there to be a problem solver. That's something that I always liked about creative advertising is, I consider myself a creative person. As I said, I always liked writing, but I don't think I have the idea for the next great novel that's going to change the world. I love getting briefs across my desk that say, this is what we want to say, this is who we have to reach, how do we do it? So you really have to remember at the end of the day that you're there to do it best, and that there will always be another opportunity. So things fall off track all the time. Things will get almost sold and then go away. Things will get almost made and then go away. Things will get made and then go away. But you always have other briefs on your desk. You always have a next opportunity coming. So just reminding yourself that, that's what you're there to do. And sometimes you get the opportunity to do something really fantastic, and that one will be your, keystone of that year.
Great. Amanda, if you could talk about clients and client management.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really great about our industry and, the variety of people that you get to work with is that you get to experience working with so many different people. And I think that really helps when you build the relationships with clients, and it goes back to building that trust, like learning and understanding how to work with different types of people. Not everyone works the same way you do, and you have to adapt yourself and how to work best with certain clients. And I think really it can take a while to learn and understand how to best work with them, but I think when you are able to sort of understand what they need from you and deliver it in a way that makes sense to them, it really does help build that trust and that relationship with them, which in turn just helps, you produce great work together. So I think that's, the biggest thing I've seen and learned through my career so far is just really adapting on how to best work with people.
Allison?
Yeah, I think from my end, being in this digital culture that we work in now and having started my career 6 years ago where we were still like very email focused and much more traditional, like having come from a big shop where I started, is getting the vocal or FaceTime with the client. I think we get so bombarded with work and schedules and projects that some of us get lost behind the screen, and it's a lot of emails. So in my career, very early on, it was like, pick up the phone. You know, if there's feedback, pick up the phone. If you're confused, pick up the phone. It's so much easier to articulate what the concern is, or the client to communicate what they don't like over the phone, than things getting convoluted and lost in an email. We all know too, you write emails and there's like an attitude, like it's so much easier over the phone. I know the one thing we do a lot where I work too is some of our clients are almost like friends. You know, you take clients out for dinner, but we've gone to spin class with clients. We always try to go to events that our team runs together as a group, and it's really just building that camaraderie and them knowing that no matter if it's program related or not, like they might just even have a question about something in general, that you're their go-to person and they can pick up the phone and call you and pick your brain. So I think that's really important.
Sarah?
Just going off of that as well, it's just when you have a productive relationship with your client and like a healthy relationship, it makes the work better. Like you end up just developing like the strongest work, which is so great. It should be a partnership. Obviously not everyone is always lucky to have such amazing clients that respect that and want that partnership and collaboration. But when you do, it's fantastic, yeah.
Emily?
Yeah, partnership for sure. I know Darren said that before, and I think that's what the culture we really build at our agency, but also just trying to find out the information around, you know, what's going to make them shine, and help supporting them and delivering that overall.
So we talked about a lot, you know, everyone mentioned change and staying on top of things. I was wondering if you could discuss, you know, how do you stay on top of, you know, cultural changes, industry changes? How do you maintain your curiosity? Let's start with Julia.
So I do think, similar to what the last group said, being a really curious person is important. I think that's what draws a lot of people to this industry. I know that working at an agency, that was what I was most interested in, because you work on all sorts of different projects, you're learning about different things, different industries all the time. But that has to extend also to your personal life. So part of it is following up on websites and blogs and things that are about the advertising industry, but then also just in your personal hobbies. So for example, I'm a podcast addict, so often you don't know where an insight or a nugget of information is going to come from. Sometimes it's from a great article about advertising, but sometimes it's a podcast about food, and something comes across your desk and you say, oh, I heard this great thing. So being dialed into the things that you love is really important, even if they don't seem at first glance to be relevant. And usually when you're on an agency team, you have people who have those sort of specialties outside of just their work specialties. So I like music, but I'm not a music person, but I know at work, if I'm trying to find great music for a spot, there's a person who is great at that, and I know who to go to, and we have those conversations all the time. So just being really passionate, even if it's not about an industry thing, can end up being a real asset when you're dialed into just the things that get you excited.
Great. Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about just, you know, kind of being a consumer yourself, you know, just being aware. And, you know, there's oftentimes I'll be, you know, scrolling through my social feeds and not even really think about something, and then something will catch my eye and I'll be like, oh wait, that's new. And then it's like, okay, let me look into that a little bit more, because maybe it's relevant to, you know, the businesses that I work on. So I think it's all just, you know, I think passion and curiosity, like we've all talked about, is something that you need to have, and just continuously wanting to, you know, invest your time in learning more about the industry in general and what's changing and what's happening. But I think a big part of it is just being a consumer yourself and understanding how your habits are changing and what you're seeing yourself do, because, you know, I feel like people always laugh, it's like sample size of one, but, you know, there's some truth and merit to that. So I think it's just, you know, being aware of that yourself.
Allison?
Very early in my career, my boss, when I was just starting interning at JWT, encouraged me to, I'm a reader anyway, but he was like, don't just focus on the industry, like focus on your client's industry and the different industries that affect them. So I was working on Tim Hortons, so it was like, you know, food, fast food and coffee and snacking and all of those different things, and then being able to sit in those meetings and draw on those nuggets of information, and then, you know, you're in a meeting and you're providing something thought-provoking to the conversation. My routine is basically I get into the office every morning and kind of have my go-to publications, go through Twitter, go through LinkedIn. Also throughout the day, I'm a chronic screen grab and slacker. Like I'll see something really cool and I'll slack it to somebody who it's relevant. And I think that's the culture with what I work in right now, is as we see things, we share them with each other actively knowing that somebody at some point will be able to leverage it. But I do think it's constantly being curious, but also trying to, also be aware of what's changing. So right now we're looking at things, trying to stay on top of things like blockchain and the algorithm changes on Facebook. And even if you're not reading the whole article, but just self-educating so that you do have those sound bites to share later.
Great. Sarah?
I love be a consumer yourself. It's interesting because our clients will even ask us, ask your friends, who's cutting their cable? Why are they doing it? Have a free focus group with your friends because they're doing it. So it's interesting. And I do, and ask your family, and it's free research, right? And it's just understanding how can advertisers and brands break through all the clutter with the evolving digital space and the way media is being purchased now.
Emily?
Yeah, I think early on in my career, one of my bosses gave me the advice, as perhaps old as it might sound, was to set up Google alerts for anything that was relating to the industry that we were currently in. And to this day, it's my habit of like walking in the morning, seeing, for my number one clients, we've put it on triggers and, anything major that's changing within the industry, so that you're the first one, you're in the know, and you want to be that person who's sharing that information first and foremost.
Exactly, and it helps really build the client partnership. What advice would you give to someone trying to break into the industry? And what do you look for in people that you're interviewing? Julia?
So my answer to both those questions is kind of 2 in 1, because I think one of the things I remember when I was looking for a job was, there's this immense pressure to find a job, find somewhere who wants to take you on, give you that chance, an internship opportunity, or even just a meeting to speak with someone. But within all of that pressure to get yourself in somewhere, I think it's really important also to make sure that this sounds like such generic advice, but truly to be yourself, and to be judging also the less concrete things about interviews and about meet and greets, like how does the conversation go? Do you get along as people? Because as some have mentioned, we work very long hours and we can be in stressful situations in this business. So making sure that you're going to an agency or working with a team that you really get along with as people is so important. And also just making sure that it's somewhere, as a creative specifically too, that has similar taste to what you have. Because you can change your book and change your book and change your book to suit a certain creative director, but if their style isn't the same as yours, that's something you're going to come up against every day at the office. So really making sure that it's a good fit on both sides is great. That being said, we are all looking for jobs, and I get that. And there's nothing wrong with, trying something out. And if you feel that it's not necessarily what you thought it was or what you were looking for, always just keeping your eyes open to see if there's other places out there that might be a good fit.
Amanda?
For people trying to come into the industry, it's just about being, open to new experiences. I mean, for me personally, I didn't think I would ever end up in advertising, and I'm so happy I did. But I was open to, just wanting to get a job. But I think it's just being open and just realizing that it doesn't have to be a forever thing. Test it out for a little while and. You can move on. And then I think, curiosity and passion, I think people have just talked about that, kind of endlessly here, but it really is just about, making sure that you are passionate about what you're doing and you're continuously curious, I think no matter what kind of job you're going for. But then also, to your point, just the fit has to be right too, and really understanding that you work with these people every day, and it's maybe okay to say no to an opportunity because you don't feel right about it based on the people that you met with, which can be really hard. But I think, just you have to realize and understand that about yourself. So fit and personality is a big one too.
Definitely. Allison?
Yeah, so I definitely think people, when they're looking for a role, they shouldn't settle. I think we get into this mindset, especially when we're finishing school, that I have to get a job. Don't overlook internships. I took an internship a year into my career. I think it's really important that you not only meet with people, but you do your research, because as we've all said, culture is a huge component to this. You want to make sure that the culture the agency exudes is something that aligns with your moral compass, what you want to be, whether it's a creative or an accounts person or a strategist, that you're going to go into work every day and be able to, feel passionate about what their overarching goals are as an organization. To anyone who's looking, I think right now you definitely need to be up on your game on anything digital and social. Whether it's reading, taking classes, leveraging lynda.com, it never hurts to be able to speak to the fact that you're continuously educating yourself. And then I think my biggest piece of feedback, which I actually got during my commencement at McMaster when Terry O'Reilly gave our address, was something called 20 seconds of courage. So not being afraid to send that email and not being afraid to walk up to somebody senior at a networking event and just ask them for a little bit of their time to get coffee. When he gave that speech, I actually emailed him during my commencement address and had coffee with him 2 weeks later. And I wasn't in the industry at the time, but he solidified why, when my contract was done in e-com, that I needed advertising to be my focus. So please don't be afraid. But when you reach out, make sure you reach out with purpose. Don't just add someone to LinkedIn, but add them to LinkedIn and send a message or walk up to somebody at that event. But we've all been there. And I think you need to remember that is we want to help the next generation and open the door for them. So just don't be afraid and take that chance.
Sarah?
So the biggest piece of advice I would give, and again, it's already been mentioned, but relationships and people are everything in this industry. I've actually landed every single role I've had from someone that I know and that I've worked with. So it's great, and use these people, use those relationships, have a mentor, meet with them, utilize these people, and it will always help, and stay in touch. I think having a mentor in this industry is awesome, and I don't think people do enough of it. And looking for a new role, I think again, you don't want to settle. Ask all the questions in the interview them just as they are to you. Ask all the right questions, know what you're signing up for. There's so many opportunities out there, and there's so many different roles and so many different agencies. Take your time and just ask all the right questions.
Great. Emily?
Yeah, I think, don't limit yourself. It's so many times I see, I've got cousins who are looking to be in the industry, and they'll search and they'll be like, marketing manager. It's like, you don't have to be so narrow as to get specific, and making sure that you're just reaching out for anything, and then being more specific afterwards and finding out what is the right fit to everyone's point, and finding that right culture, and making sure that it's going to be something you're proud of and happy to go into and do every day.
So last question, and it'll be the same as the last panel. What's a piece of work that you're really proud to have worked on? Julia?
So a couple of years ago, we worked on a video project that is still my favorite thing to work on, because it was just sort of the perfect storm of a great client, a great cause, and a great piece of work. We work a lot with a company called Accessible Media that's all about bringing media to people with disabilities, especially visual disabilities. And they had just revamped their whole website to be more accessible online, which is really important. And they wanted essentially to make a piece of content to put out to their community to say, our website is now accessible. But we, looked at it and said, this is part of a bigger conversation. Maybe we could make something a little bit bigger about the importance of web accessibility, but do it in a way that would get other people's attention who aren't necessarily looking up the topic already. So we made a video called Canine Online, where we showed the parallel. It was a parody of a school where guide dogs are trained to help people with vision loss in the real world. What if we trained guide dogs to help people with vision loss navigate the internet? So it was exactly like it sounds. It was a bunch of dogs on computers. So it was a great day on set. It was really fun to work on, and ended up as a really funny video, but the kind of funny that really makes you think at a deeper level. So not only was everyone on the team really happy with the result, not only was it an enjoyable thing to watch, but it also felt like we were really getting an important message out there. So that was sort of the trifecta of pieces in my portfolio so far, that we were really happy with the results.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was definitely a lot of fun. It threw our producers for a loop when they said, how many dogs? And we just said, as many as you can get, just bring them all. But it was really fun for everyone on that day, and editing was just like a big blooper reel of dog videos on the internet, and just picking the best ones to be in the final film.
Amanda?
I don't think I have necessarily a brand specific example, but I think some of the work that I've been most excited and most proud to work on is when you work on projects with your clients that kind of shift the way that they're thinking about things. So, I've worked on a few projects that have been brand new to the clients, whether it's in, the online digital space or social or anything like that. And, it's exciting to, sort of almost kind of push them to say this is where your brand needs to go, and then to actually, you know, get them on board with that and go through the whole process of doing the work and actually seeing it in market, and it being successful. I think some of those projects are the ones that I'm most proud to have worked on.
Allison?
Yeah, so right before Christmas, to cap off 2017, we received a brief to do a campaign for TD. And I think sometimes the best briefs are the ones that give you the biggest challenge. It was definitely a labor of love, and it required us to all be strategic partners. So ourselves at Diamond, our media partner, the clients had to be available, which we all know is sometimes really difficult. But it was like, if we want to get this out in a market, everyone needs to be on board. We were able to find this really unique human insight with credit cards, that instead of this card gets you this trip, it's like, you know, that moment when you book your trip, that's your moment. Like, that's when you're excited, regardless if the trip is in 2 weeks or 5 months, you're pumped. And we actually were able to create social first creative that was both brand online video, but then also our influencer team was able to work with Jesse Cruikshank and Jay and Dan to not only have their audience help them pick where they're going, but create some really unique social videos to speak to the credit card, but then also to speak to their life and travel. And it was just really rewarding because it was accomplished in a short amount of time, but it was the true definition of everyone coming together for success. And I was just really proud to be a part of it.
That sounds great. Sarah?
So it was one of those experiences where we pushed our client to doing something that they weren't necessarily comfortable with or that they have ever done before. So I was working for an automotive brand for so it was a branded content program. So normally the automotive company was very, very into just 30-second TV spots. So branded content is entirely different. It's selling, it's advertising through storytelling. So just having the brand be comfortable, not having their product as the hero, was a completely shift in the way they thought. So we sold that through, and it was a really successful program. It was like a mini 12-episode series that lived on digital and TV, completely, of course, different from the traditional advertising that they used to. And then it was successful, and we had the numbers to prove it. So it was really, really rewarding experience, yeah.
Emily?
Yeah, I don't think it's one particular program for me, and love seeing how it's slowly developed and how we've been able to change it and adapt it year over year. With how the industry changes. So I think I'm really proud that we've been able to continually to stay ahead of the curve and make sure that, you know, we're always, we're not just being stagnant. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming down and sharing your insights with everyone. I'm pretty sure the audience found that incredibly useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're just going to be setting up for the last panel of 10 plus years. And if just make sure to join us.
Hello, I'm from ASC, Advertising Standards Canada. But you can now call us Ad Standards. That's what we're going by from this day forward. This was our old logo, and this is our new one. Welcome to our 2-ish minute video about who we are and what we do. So, what is Ad Standards? For over 60 years, we've been an independent, not-for-profit advertising industry body that helps ensure all advertising across all media is truthful, fair, and accurate. In 1963, we created the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards. The code, as we like to call it, not only applies to TV, print, and radio advertising, but all outdoor and online advertising, too. Online advertising? What is that? Within the code, there are 14 clauses that set the criteria for acceptable advertising in Canada. Without getting into the messy details, it is unacceptable if an ad is not truthful, fair, or accurate.
So, if you see or hear an ad that you believe is misleading or not delivering on the claim that it's making, or providing incorrect or inadequate information, complaints can be submitted using our online complaint submission form. All complaints are reviewed based on criteria set out in the code. If an ad is found to not meet those standards, we ask the advertiser to fix its ad or withdraw it. We also offer a pre-clearance service in 5 regulated categories: children's advertising, food and non-alcoholic beverages, alcoholic beverages, consumer drugs, and cosmetics. We will review ad copy in these categories to ensure that legislative, regulatory, and other requirements are met. And for Ad Standards members, we offer an advisory service that helps keep consumer complaints at bay by helping ensure their ad copy adheres to all clauses in the code.
Oh, 60 years looks really good on me. To put it simply, Ad Standards helps advertisers stay in good standing with Canadian consumers and regulators. So that about sums it up. Ad Standards is committed to doing the right thing for both Canadian consumers and the advertising industry, because truth in advertising matters. To learn more, please visit adstandards.ca. Truth in advertising for over 60 years. Our new logo looks even better in color.
So we're live now with our final panel of this live stream, and this is the 10+ year experience group. We have 3 fabulous individuals to talk to us. Let's start with Liz. If you could say, who you are, what you do, how you got into the industry.
Hi, I'm Liz. So I work at PhD. I am a group account director in digital specifically. So I actually have about 8 years experience in the industry, so a little bit less than these guys here, potentially. But where I started, I did my undergrad at the University of Guelph, and it was sort of more general arts focused, and I finished my degree not really knowing what to do. I took a couple years off and traveled, and then I ended up going and finding the Humber Media Program, which was just a year post-grad, and I took that, and that led me right to my first job at a small full-service agency called the Brainstorm Group. I was there for just under 2 years, and then I moved. I sort of saw the opportunity with digital. I saw that the space was growing really quickly, so I kind of wanted to jump on that opportunity. So I got a chance to interview for a job at PhD as a digital strategist, and went there, and I've been at PhD ever since, so about 6 years now.
Can you talk a bit about the difference of being at a small shop versus a much larger one?
Yeah, I think someone spoke a little bit about this earlier, but my experience was slightly different. So both experiences were fantastic, so I'd encourage any students that are exploring both. There's definitely pros and cons to both. At the small agency, you probably have a wider scope of responsibilities because you don't have necessarily all the resources and departments and staff that a large agency has. You kind of have to do a lot of that grunt work yourself. So for me, starting at a small agency was a fantastic experience. We had creative people just down the hall, so that was a huge benefit, a really great culture. So it was a great sort of place to start off, learn sort of the landscape of media buying, media planning, getting that sort of exposure to presenting to clients and things like that, and then jumping into more expertise in the digital space. So I think they're both really great experiences, great fundamentals to learn at a small agency. Then moving into a larger agency, the pressures are different. It's a lot to keep up with. It's intimidating at first, most likely. But again, there's a lot more people there, a lot more people to learn from. Again, you get all the fancy resources and things like that that a large, holding company can offer you. A lot of opportunity for growth, a lot of opportunity to try different disciplines within the agency, which is nice, and a lot of opportunity to work on different clients. So in my experience working at PhD, I worked on the auto category and finance category and government. So it was a really great opportunity to sort of get exposure to different expertise and categories.
Okay, Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Nago. I'm the Director of Client Services at a little agency called Open. Our clients are Twitter. Thanks for hosting. Toys R Us, Babies R Us, Kelsey's, which is a care brand, Food Basics, which is a Metro brand. We're getting signals to do something. Oh. Keep going. And yeah, that's me.
Where did you start your career?
Well, I studied political science, and I thought I was going to be a news producer, and somehow found advertising. That path was actually working in television production, working in the news, doing a bunch of internships. And then I got a job at an award show in the UK called D&AD, and it's one of the industry's best with Cannes Lion. And I was just exposed to amazing people, amazing work, and it kind of gave me the advertising bug. And when I moved back to Toronto, that's how I got into the advertising industry.
And where did you go to when you moved back to Toronto?
So when I was at DNAD, I met an amazing woman, Elspeth Lynn, who had founded an agency called Zig. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was one of the best many, many years ago. And I met her, and she said, look me up when you come back to Toronto. And I looked her up, and she got me a job. And yeah, I've loved it ever since.
That's great. Jeff?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm very relaxed. It's a very deep couch. So I apologize to anybody watching if I look slumped. It's just I don't know how to sit here. Jeff Dack. I am the CEO of Cara Canada. Been there now 2 years, just over 2 years. My story has a lot of similarities. There's a lot of crossovers. Back in 2000, got into the industry, did my first I got hired and fired in my first month in advertising. So I got hired into Chiat Day. I was a copywriter. My father was very proud of me. He's like, you're going to be a copyright lawyer? And I was like, no, I'm just a copywriter. I'm going to write ads. But he was very proud of me. A month later, I got thanked for my time and let go. And it was like the best and worst thing that ever happened to me because at first I was really proud. I was like, I got a job right out of school. I went to Humber as well. Right after university, I was at Humber for 5 months and kind of just figured it out and got a gig and never looked back. So I got hired to Chiat Day, big fancy agency, think I'm going to do my thing, and then they kind of just said, okay, we don't really need you. You were just here as a freelancer. I didn't even know what that meant. Like literally, I was just lost, and I learned right then and there, don't put like a 21, 22-year-old in the corner and expect them to figure it out, right? You need to kind of guide people. So that was good learning. But the best thing was 2 days later, I walked into Zig, and I think I was the 6th or 8th employee. We were just talking about that in the hallway. Literally started, they had been open a month, and I got to learn from Elspeth and Lorraine and Andy just kind of how to work in an ad agency, and what to do, and how to write copy, and how to really sweat the work, and how to care. And so kind of built up my skills that way. Got partnered up with a guy, an art director, and we worked together for 5 years after that. We went to Cassette together, got a really cool opportunity to work there on Nike and Coca-Cola and some of the beer brands. And just being a creative in big agencies is an amazing experience. And so kind of worked my way up that way. Then took a bit of a turn and went into strat planning and became a strategic planner. I was curious about kind of how it all works. I was curious about what makes us tick and why we do what we do and buy what we buy. And so I got involved in strat planning. Worked for a wonderful woman named Ann Sutherland, who I knew through Andy at Zig, so it was all kind of connected. And she was great, took me under her wing and really kind of mentored me and built me up. And that was a great experience. Then I went to a small shop called GWP Brand Engineering, where I got the opportunity to be a creative director. So now I'd kind of been a creative guy and a strat guy, and now I got to be a creative director and oversee other creative teams, and that was a really good learning experience as well. And then real detour and became a client. So I went client side, and I worked in a CPG, Jameson Laboratories, so vitamins, minerals, supplements. I knew nothing about vitamins, minerals, or supplements, but I knew that I never got the chance to do an MBA. And I was curious about how everything works, and I wanted to understand how we actually sell products, right? Because we kind of do some part of the process, but how does the other end of the funnel work? So got a real kind of hands-on learning how to actually do that. We built up share to, I think it was a 27 or a 28 share, and got to the point where we were doing really great work, dominating the category, and then the owner came to us and said he was ready to sell the company. So then I got to work with a group of 4 of us, and we sold the company, went through the M&A process, and got to work with private equity and kind of learn that whole side of the business. As you can see, there's a pattern of learning here. And then from my client experience, I went back into agency land. I ran a shop called Low Roche, got the opportunity to run a shop there. And then from Low Roche to Cara. And so that's the journey in 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
And it's been a pretty cool journey.
And I was wondering if you could build upon that and talk about how, now you're at Cara and it's a media company.
It is.
And obviously La Roche was a traditional creative agency.
Yeah.
So how has that transition been?
So, okay, so let me qualify all remarks. So I'll qualify all remarks by saying 2 things. 1, I didn't get a chance to watch the other interviews. So if I'm being repetitive, apologies. 2, just my opinion. Take it for what it is. I think if you hear it over and over again, there's something to it. For me, running an agency is running an agency. Like agencies are groups of people all collaborating together to help solve client problems in the Marcom world, generally. So whether it's a media agency, a creative agency, a PR agency, a digital agency, an insert medium channel here agency, to me it's all the same stuff. It's how do you get people rallied around ideas and clients and bring a collective energy to help solve their problems. So that's kind of the way I approach media agency. I am not a media guy, as you've kind of articulated. And I ask a lot of questions. And for a lot of people, it really puts them off. They don't understand. Like, why don't you know that? Why don't you know that acronym? I'm like, well, because I've never heard that acronym. I don't know. Like, why don't you know this person I used to work with? I'm like, I don't know, never heard of him. I don't know who he is, right? But in a way, it's actually been really, I think, helpful and liberating to the group because it has kind of forced people to have to explain themselves. And I find, especially in media, which is such a specific kind of, there's been, in the past decades, a specific way of working. And when you kind of disrupt that and break it and get people to actually explain what their actions, those who I think are the rock stars are able to explain it. Well, this is why we do this, and this is how it works, and great. And those who can't are the ones who say, well, that's just because of the way we've always done it, right? And I was like, well, the way we've always done it doesn't work anymore. I think I'm here for a reason. And so we kind of approached it that way, and it's worked. We've grown. We're now the second largest volume media agency in the country. We've got 4 offices. We opened 2 new offices last year. We continue on this track. We've got big clients, got a nice mix, small clients and big clients, and we kind of bring the same approach and energy to all of them. And so far, so good. So there are distinct differences for sure, and we can talk more about them afterwards because I feel like I'm stealing the mic. But overall, yeah, they were like, just keep going. Overall, though, I would suggest that an agency is an agency is an agency, and really it's not about the discipline, it's about how do you get from good to great, and that's a whole other conversation.
Now, I was wondering if we could talk about how the industry has changed while you've been in it from the beginning to now. Let's start with Liz.
Sure. I mean, I think as a person who's worked exclusively in digital for most of my career, I've seen a tremendous amount of change. I think just looking at the consolidation of the market, when I first worked in digital, you know, you had 20 different partners on a plan. So you were working with, you know, numerous different publishers. It was sort of the evolution of ad networks and things like that. And really the space has changed. I think programmatic is probably one of the biggest changes to happen in the market. I think the way we look at data has changed, you know, an incredible amount. As was spoken to in one of the earlier panels, there's so much data now. Clients have more data. There's more web analytics data. Media data is getting smarter and better. So I think the way we adapt to that change in evolution, so what reports looked like 5 years ago is nothing like what a report looks like now. I think that's been a tough part. Like, we've all almost become analysts, and, you know, and insights, you know, development is a really key part of that role as well. So I think data is probably, like, you know, it's maybe too generic of a term, but that has really changed the industry, I think, quite a bit. I think the big players, I mean, the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks and the power they have over the industry, and Twitter, of course, and, you know, and Snapchat and all these really, you know, large companies that are really game changers in the market, and they, you know, they hold a lot of control, but they also hold a tremendous amount of wealth of knowledge and data about consumers. I think, again, this was spoken to a little bit in the earlier panels, but understanding consumers is so important. I think that, you know, it's not just about, you know, being a mobile first brand. It's really like the reason why mobile's so important is because there's a person holding that phone. So I think it's really about the consumer and understanding their evolution has become, you know, it was never not important, but I think the way that we are able to actually track and monitor that is so different now that we can be super smart and super, you know, appropriate and relevant for that particular, you know, user. So it's like, you know, more of moving towards a one-to-one relationship with those consumers.
Yeah, and keeping in mind the fact that people have incredible, like, this is the most intimate relationship most people have at this point, is with their phone.
Absolutely. And even, like, again, sorry, just one more thing, just speaking to, like, a change, I think the relationship consumers have with ads has changed quite a bit as well. Like, I think before, you know, even again, just speaking in the length of my career, you know, ads were sort of generic and they were there, and people, you know, I don't know if they were offended necessarily is the right word, but they were just sort of an interruption to their experience. And I think if you do marketing right, you're offering an experience of value, and the way we can sort of intercept and be connected with users is so different now that, you know, for millennials and some of the younger audiences coming in, their trust in advertisements is higher. They also are better bullshit detectors probably than anyone, as I think Vice likes to say all the time, but they're the best bullshit detectors, and they can identify that when someone's lying or being deceiving, or there's a lack of authenticity. But I think at the same time, they're super comfortable with the digital marketing, and they're comfortable seeing that, you know, if they're looking for a certain pair of boots last week and all of a sudden they're seeing an ad for that pair that's on sale, they appreciate that versus are afraid of it, I think, in a certain way.
Anne?
I did listen to the other panels, so, and I think everyone has pretty much hit on all the ways that the industry has changed and advertising has changed and marketing has changed. So just to say sort of something a little bit different is that from when I started, it changed every year. It changes every month. So I think we are an industry, you know, people change, technology changes. I think if anything, it's getting faster. So I think that's the nature and the exciting part of our business, and that all that change shouldn't scare us, and it is our business, right? So I think everybody mentioned all the ways it's changed, whether you've been in the industry for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's the nature of our business, and yeah, it's getting more and more fast-paced, and it's a matter of keeping up, getting ahead, and finding the best way to, you know, to communicate your brand's message.
Jeff?
So I think a couple things have changed. I think, and maybe it's just my own lens on it, I think some of the romance has been taken out of it. I think, you know, any half-educated client's going to know how we do what we do, right? There's no big, like, I remember when I started, there used to be the creatives would disappear for 2 weeks and come back with this amazing thing, right? And it was just, it was awesome. Now I think we all kind of know how that works. So I don't think there's a lot of mystery, and especially in our world, in the media world, I mean, everything, like, transparency is everywhere, right? So everybody kind of understands that. So I think there's that element. I also think the rise, and it's no secret, the rise of procurement has changed things. How do you distinguish yourself as a real, you know, thought leader and partner to your clients versus just being another supplier, just being another kind of, like, media's a commodity, right? It's like we all kind of buy it, we all plan it, buy it, and sell it based on the same metrics, and, you know, some of us get better deals than others based on scale and size, but at the end of the day, it's a thing that anybody can buy, right? And so if that's the case, how do we differentiate ourselves from somebody else who can buy it? And that has really changed, and the lens that we look at our business on, and I guess the margins have compressed as such. And so I think that's been a change. I don't know if it's been better or worse. I think a lot of people in our position would say it's been worse for the industry. I would say it's just more challenging, but, you know, it's cliche, but the cream rises, and the same kind of handful of really strong agencies are still strong agencies because they figured it out, right? They figured out how to work with clients to demonstrate value, which is always important, and ultimately deliver something better than they can deliver themselves. And I think that maybe is the kind of the headline here. I was a client. Anybody's been a client. It's not that hard to put together a marketing plan and execute upon it. Now, is it good, or is it great, or is it average? Those are the kind of ways you have to look at it. Anybody can execute a marketing plan. It's not rocket science. It's can you make a good one, right? Can you produce something that's fantastic that'll actually resonate with consumers? And that's why I think agencies still have a really important role. But if that ever changes, and it is changing, some people are keeping their work in-house. I did that because I didn't think I was getting the value from the agencies. What I didn't do was take media in-house, because I knew it was something that we couldn't do on our own and we needed help. And so in that sense, it is changing. I think, to your point, it's always going to change and evolve. If it doesn't, watch out, right? Because if it's stagnant, it means we're not doing our jobs and keeping pushing forward. So lots of change, lots of happening, lots of rambling from me as well.
No, it's all good. I mean, obviously, you know, you touched upon certain key things. You know, procurement is a huge issue in the industry that everyone struggles with. Differentiation between agencies. You know, if you look, you know, Mirren has done quite a bit of research into this. If you look at most agency websites, they all look the same. They all have the same language. They're not speaking to the client and what the client needs, which is really to move product, because in the end, that's what we're doing. So I was wondering if you could all discuss how do you keep your client's needs top of mind, and how you manage your client, and how that's changed throughout your career. Maybe give some best practice tips for the people who are watching, who are entering the industry.
I'll start.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Yeah. I think you have to be the best listener in every conversation, in every meeting. Whether, you know, they can, you know, when we're discussing something with our clients, they can give us an objective, but we listened and there was a nugget in just a passing comment that became something else, or triggered another conversation. So I think that, to me, is the key to the relationship. If you are not listening and you are, you know, way ahead on your own cool path, you are going to fail, and that relationship will fall apart. So I think listening at every level, whether it's your you know, it's a marketing manager or the VP or the president of a company, you be the best listener when you're having a conversation that you can be, and that's where the nuggets are going to be, and that's where the relationship stays intact.
Liz? Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And just, you know, in terms of tips, one of the things that we do now is we develop measurement plans before the campaign. So I think like it's very common, of course, you're always gonna have KPIs and that sort of thing, but we spend a lot of time, you know, making sure that we have the right research in place to evaluate the success of a campaign, whether that's, you know, as far as like market mix modeling and things like that, or simply making sure, you know, your conversion pixels are in place or you've got certain goals set. And I think establishing the measurement plan early on and everyone sort of agreeing to how we are going to evaluate success, and then being able at the end of the campaign to sort of say yes or no, we did this, and being able to learn from that and evolve. I think that again, you know, sort of helps sort of make sure that everything's clear and well communicated. And I think that clients really appreciate that, especially because oftentimes that's what they need to take internally to, you know, tell, you know, we just spent, you know, a few $1 million in media, did that work? Being able to answer that question is really important for clients, and we want to be able to help them, you know, facilitate those conversations and come from a really educated place.
Highly recommend, if anybody has the opportunity to do both, be in the agency world and the client world, to try it. Whether it works or not, just try it. Because I found that since I did it, I can only speak from my own experience, it enabled me to develop a sense of empathy that I didn't have before. Clients are they're just regular people, right? Making really important, expensive decisions. And they've got agencies and vendors and partners coming at them and saying, you should do this and you should do that, and here's why it will work and here's why it won't work, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, they go back and they make the call. I'm like, are we going to do it? Are we going to hit the green button? Are we going to hit the red button? Are we going to do this or not? And it wasn't personally until I got the chance to actually do that, make those decisions, and realizing those decisions impacted people's lives and jobs, et cetera, that you realize like, it's not so easy, right? When I was on the agency side at the beginning of my career, you know, we wouldn't sell something, which is, you get used to that, that's no big thing. But you'd always wonder, like, why? It's such a great idea. Why didn't they buy it, right? They're dumb, we're smart. Like, and it's no. They didn't buy it for so many reasons. It has nothing to do with whether the campaign was working or not, or whether it would have, you know, sold X or won award Y or whatever. That wasn't the point. There was a whole series of variables and factors that went into that decision that we knew nothing about because we were just the agency coming in and trying to recommend something. And so I think understanding all those variables, what goes into making a decision, really important, help build a sense of empathy, to then be able to say to your client, hey, I get what you're going through, been there, done that. Let me help walk you through this. Or frankly, to say to your client, you know what, it's not the right decision. You know what, I get it, and you know what, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot here, but I don't think you should do this, and here's why. So developing that type of relationship, which kind of leads me to my second point, which is no two relationships are the same. It's just like anything, right? It's just like dating. It's just like marriage. It's like you need to develop specific relationships with clients based on their needs, your needs, and it's kind of a back and forth, right? It is not insert process here for most, especially at a senior level. And that's especially why it's really important that it's not just about, you know, the C-suite or the senior level or whatever. It's about having a bunch of people surrounding clients, developing relationships at different levels, to be able to answer questions from different perspectives, right? I think otherwise you get stuck in this bubble where you just start talking to yourself and you'll realize a half hour later we're just using jargon. Like, I don't know what we just talked about for the last half hour. It sounded really smart. And then you kind of look at it. If you had like a playback, you'd be like, what was that, all right? Because you're talking to yourself in Marcom speak, right? It's just like marketing, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, and so it's just, I think different perspectives is really important, understanding the relationship and evolving with it and realizing that it's not perfect. And it's okay. It's a journey, and we keep going forward, and we all have a common goal. And kind of figuring that stuff out, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think looking at the client through a holistic lens. And, you know, so often, you know, when there's discussion about relationships between agencies and clients, it's very much CMO focused. But the reality is, you know, it's your account people and their marketing managers, and what are the pain points there that's happening, and how does that scale up to the CMO? And getting an understanding of that entire ecosystem within that client. Hugely important. The other thing, too, because I think we've all gotten caught in this trap, is don't presume to know the answer. Right? And so it's kind of like, okay, it's another auto client. Well, we've done auto. We know what we're doing. It's insert plan here. And no. But you have a natural tendency when you have more experience to go to, like, I've been here, done this, so therefore we're going to run the same play. And it's like, no. Don't presume to know the answer. One, it makes the journey a lot less fun. And two, it's probably wrong. Right? Like, the odds are tomorrow's solution's not the same as today's. Even though it may seem like it, it's not. And so I think that's hard. It's hard to kind of push against that.
it's hard not to get into a formula. I think some agencies is like, oh, they're the funny agency.
Yeah.
Right? They do the quirky, funny stuff. And it's like, well, okay, because they figured out a formula. And that works for a period of time. But eventually you realize that next client's not looking for that formula, right? And so why would they go to your agency? And so I think it's important not to get kind of caught in that rut and presume you know the answer.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you can all speak to that about, you know, we all sometimes fall in love with our babies. So how do we make sure that we don't?
I have 3 babies and I love them all equally. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. So.
I think we're a creative industry, right? And I think have fun in the process. Don't be too precious about anything, because our business is to solve a client's problem. So if you get too attached to your babies, you are going to be heartbroken over and over again. So I think, I think be generous with your ideas. I say this on the director of client service side, not from the, but I think that's sort of the philosophy of our agency is let's be generous with our ideas and listen to feedback. And if something is not right, you know, the client has told us it's not right for reasons X, Y, and Z. So listen to them and let's go back at it. So I think that's just how you have to come into it, is that we work in a fun, creative industry. That is our job. And listen again and make the right decisions for your clients.
Liz?
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, evolve and don't be afraid to take risks and don't be afraid of failure. I think, you know, in the digital world, people can be paralyzed by the amount of data that's out there and the opportunity that exists. So I think just not being afraid to try something new. And go somewhere where you haven't been before, and don't be so dependent on precedent. And I think that's a lot where all the trust and the relationship building you do with clients can be really beneficial, because if you've got them, you know, if they know that you've got their business and their best interests at heart, and you're suggesting an opportunity, it's because it's like well strategized, it's well thought out. And yes, there will always be risk when there's no precedent, but to be comfortable in sort of stepping into that space, you know, without being paralyzed by fear. There's always a little bit of fear when you try something new, and I think that's okay. But I think, yeah, just not being afraid to evolve will get you out of your comfort zone. Because yes, we all get to a point where we feel like we're really good at something and we've got it figured out, and you don't want to mess with the magic. But at the same time, you know, there's always better ideas out there. There's always new ideas out there, and it's just about being willing to be open to that, I guess.
Is rejection, right? I hear no all the time, and you have to get used to it and actually kind of embrace it and just say, you know what, that's fine, I'll come back with something better, right? And if you have that attitude of just that weight of like perseverance, hugely important. But when you're starting out, like you hear no, like I don't know, if you're a young creative and you hear no from your creative director, it's like earth shattering. It's like, oh my God, my heart's broken. But guess what? Like you're gonna get up tomorrow and come back with 10 more ideas. And if you don't kind of have that get back on the treadmill kind of attitude, it's not gonna work, because this whole industry is full of rejection, and it's those people that kind of rise above it, take it on as kind of a badge of honor and say, okay, forget that, I'm just gonna come back with something better. I think those are the people that really make it, and do it for a long time and enjoy the pain. Because it is like it's a crazy roller coaster. Every day something different. That's the fun of it, though. If you're looking for something steady Eddie, 9 to 5, I know where I'm going to be eating tonight and what I'm going to be doing tomorrow morning, like, it's probably not the right deal for you. If you like the energy, the ups, the downs, and you can ride it and accept that that's kind of is what it is, and all you can control is the work you do and it's the effort you put into it, everything else will work itself out. That's the way I've kind of approached it, and I don't know, head down seems to have worked so far. But there are those who you look at and you're like, you know, my age, like my vintage, whatever, and you know, started out working with me, and no longer doing this, they're doing something else, and it's just because they just couldn't take it, right? They just, after a while, they're just like, you know what, I burnt out, and I just couldn't stand hearing no anymore, and I just didn't want to do it, and that's cool. But for those of us who kind of keep coming back for more, I think there's something to that.
Yeah, and just to like elaborate on that, I think a passion is required for this job. I think, you know, we've all done our 80, 90-hour weeks where you feel pretty exhausted, but I think if you just love what you do and you're passionate about it, I think it helps you sort of power through. So anyone coming into the industry, like certainly agency work is hard. It's a lot of hours, but I think that again, like if you're in a great culture where you have a ton of support, again, you can sort of work collectively to power through that. And just, you know, keep going. But I think passion, curiosity are almost like mandatories for this industry, because it's the only thing that's going to keep getting you going, getting past the failures, getting past the no's, and rejections when you think you've got a really great idea and, you know, and you get a no from a client or a no internally or whatever that happens to be. It's just being able to overcome that, learn from that, and, you know, that it's hard to do without, you know, a passion for the job.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to someone trying to break in?
I mean,
let's start with you, Liz.
Sure, I'll go for it. I would say talk to people in the industry in various different roles. So, you know, if you're interested in the digital space, talk to someone who works in digital strategy, talk to someone who works in social, talk to someone who works in search. I'm sure on the creative side, you know, talk to account people, talk to the different departments, you know, and just make sure that you figure out, you know, what the industry is all about. Because I think even like I went to a media program, I went to Humber, but even then, like, you know, it was a wonderful program, but you kind of don't know until you get into it, into the space, especially because, you know, when I went through the program, the digital section of the program was not fully developed. And I knew I had an appetite for digital, so it was hard to really understand what I was expecting. I didn't really know what I had signed up for, in all honesty. So I think talking to people is the best. Best advice I can give. So if you can find out names or get contacts at different agencies and meet someone for coffee. I mean, I think even a year or two into my career, that was one of my biggest learnings, is that I met people from different agencies and I talked to them about, you know, what their experience was like. And I asked a lot of questions, and I was very curious about other careers and, you know, and what, you know, how people got to where they got in their positions. And I think that was really helpful for me. So my advice would be to talk to people who are actually doing the job now, because there's nothing better than hearing it from someone who's actually day to day living and breathing that. And they can give you the most honest perspective, you know, like there are highs and lows to every job. And I think in some certain disciplines, if you're not super keen for a particular skill set, it might not be the right position for you. And I think you can only really find that out by asking more questions, because at the end of the day, you want to find the career where you're best suited. And that's probably, you know, what I would suggest to someone.
Well, I didn't know Jeff when he first started in the industry, so I'm not saying it's your fault, but I think if they put you in the corner, get out of the corner, and don't wait until they ask you, an agency or any company asks you to do something. See where you can help, ask questions, do more work than you've been asked to do, to get feedback. I think those are the things that you need to do, and I think the words have been used here repeatedly: a curiosity, a passion. Yeah, I think those are the keys to succeeding in an industry that can, you know, put a 21-year-old in the corner and keep going about their day. And I think just, you know, that is one of the keys, is to just get out of the corner. Yeah.
Nobody puts baby in the corner.
No one puts baby.
So, thank you. A couple of things. So, first thing, this is going to sound harsh. It is not for us to figure out what you want to do. Okay? You owe it to yourself and your future career to figure out what it is you want to be when you grow up, to get yourself in the door. I know so many people come and they want to do it all, and that's amazing. They come to me and say, okay, I'm creative and I'm smart and I'm passionate and I love advertising. Over to you. I'm like, no, what do you want to be, right? Like, what do you want to do to at least enable people like us in our position to say, okay, this person belongs on this team doing this particular work to start their career because we have a need, right? There's a reality to this. There's like a need, and you need to fill that need. So you got to figure out what you want to do. But then, to your point, it's hands up time. Say yes to everything. That's my personal advice. It's just like, that's what I did. It seemed to work. Say yes to everything, every opportunity that comes up, every project, every opportunity to be on a committee or try something. Even if you don't know, just say yes and figure it out. Be the first one in the morning, be the last one out at night. Like, it's just kind of 101 stuff, but it's really important. It matters. It demonstrates passion, and it also trains you for the realities of what this thing is, because it evolves, but it doesn't change, right? Like, so you might get to a point in your career where you can control when you come and go, as far as your hours go, your home life, work balance situation. But know that after that dinner is over, you're going to get back online and do work, because that's the passion and the interest that you have, right? And so I think it's just good training. Continually say yes, figure out what you want to do, get involved, and then as you grow those skills and kind of stretch laterally, you may end up doing something completely different, but you won't know until you try it. So I'd say get your foot in the door and then just bust that door open and have fun. and radiate positivity. As like, I don't know, lame as that sounds, like people want to work with people that are positive, that they want to spend time with. You're going to spend a lot of time with these people, so you might as well like them, right? Be likable, be kind, be generous, and just, you know, do great work.
And it's a small industry.
It's a small industry,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just to add to that, like, be humble,
Yes.
and don't be too good for any task. Like at my first job, you know, I had to make a lot of photocopies, and I would skip over to the photocopier and be like, no problem, like, you know what I mean? And I would get any job that I was asked, I would do. And I think that that's something that when I'm seeing younger people come into the industry now, it's kind of like on day 3 they're ready to be CEO, or they're ready for the next task or the next job. And I think there's a lot of merit in doing your time and working hard and earning it and getting there. And I think, like, even if you are doing something like making photocopies for a meeting, you're contributing to the agency, to the productivity, to everything. You know, no role is too little, I guess, is a word. And I think it's just important to sort of be excited about the job and take on any task that's given you. And just, like I would say, be humble.
Now, last question, and this is one that I've asked all the other panelists, wasn't on the list, but what piece of work have you been most proud to work on?
I guess, I don't think I won't speak to a specific campaign, but, you know, one of the clients that I work on is Tangerine, which I think was mentioned a little bit earlier by my coworker. But I'm incredibly proud of the partnership that we've built with them. It's been a fantastic experience working with them and seeing them launch a new brand, and going through the experiences and hurdles of being sort of the underdog in the FI space. So I think my proudest achievements, I guess, collectively as a group, the team that works on that account, is when we go through our evaluations at the end of the year. So not every client does this the same way, but, you know, we basically have a report card that we go through, and we have to check certain boxes, and we basically get graded on various criteria. And we've had, you know, a few consecutive years of glowing results, and that's in terms of them achieving actual, like, measurable goals in terms of their acquisitions, in terms of their awareness targets. So, you know, deposit growth, everything. And, you know, we played a really, really significant role in that. And I think that those of us who work on that team, we feel like a true extension of the Tangerine team. We actually, I think, often feel like we work at Tangerine. And I don't think that that's something that every client offers their agency as well. So we feel really proud and really, you know, lucky that we work on such a great piece of business, and we've been able to see such amazing success.
So working at an agency that is smaller, and I've been there pretty much since its infancy, we've done a lot of firsts for clients that I'm really proud of. So for our Food Basics client, they'd never advertised on TV, and we did their first TV spot. We launched them on Facebook. For Smythe, a fashion client of ours, we launched their e-com site, and all of the advertising around that. We've launched brands. So I think all of those firsts, you feel, those are your babies, and you feel very, I think as an agency, we feel very proud of that work and getting there with clients who, it's very scary for them, it's a lot of money for them. So there's a lot of sort of hand-holding and reassurance that goes into those. So when they launch, there's an extra source of pride, rather than people who sort of, you know, are so used to advertising and launching campaigns and spending $1 million. These projects have been the proudest from my perspective. So
I've been doing this now close to 20 years. So as I start doing the mental math, there's like hundreds of campaigns and lots of pitches and wins and losses and lots of great stuff. And currently have fantastic clients. Great stories there. One that kind of just jumped out at me is a long time ago now. We were working with a client. It was a nonprofit called Gilda's Club. And Gilda's Club was started by Gilda Radner from Saturday Night Live, who died of cancer. And a club was started in her name to basically create a safe space for people dealing with cancer to come together and share stories and spend time together. It was kind of like a clubhouse. And I remember my partner and I, we were relatively young in the industry, presenting creative to the client, and she started crying, like not to like sobbing. We were like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna be crass. Like, holy shit, what did we do? Like, we screwed this up. Like, we were really upset. And then so finally, I got the guts up to say, like, are you okay? She's like, yeah. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, nothing's wrong. It's exactly the opposite. you guys figured out a way of saying what I've been thinking and unable to say, and just like, thank you. And for that, that was one of those, it's like, I don't know, 15 years later, it still sticks with me, where it's just like, wow. Sometimes what we do is more powerful than just selling stuff, right? Sometimes it's actually moving people emotionally and actually, you know, really making a difference. And that was one of those moments for me that will always stick out, of just being like, it was just, I don't know, it felt great to make somebody cry. But it really, like, we changed, you know, we really nailed what she was trying to do and helped this nonprofit move itself forward. And we're just really proud of that work that we did years ago, and it still sticks with me today.
Well, that's the dream, right? To have a piece of work that you create or have worked on that truly moves someone.
Yeah, it matters, right? And you can be proud of it. And it's that little, like that little bit of, you know, where you can just say, okay, you know, for all the no's and all the pain and all the late nights and all, there's something to that money can't buy, right? It's that feeling of like pride and just being proud of the work, I think was great.
So we're almost done, but I thought I'd end with, what is the one thing that you would tell someone trying to break in? It could be anything. Not advice, it could be like, you know, this is what it's actually like, or this is something that I found completely unexpected when I entered my career, or, you know, you're in for this kind of surprise.
I think have fun. I think we work in the most fun industry possible. There's so many amazing, smart people. I don't mean like go to every party. I mean, have fun when you're at, have fun when you're at work. You know, the creative process is super fun. I'm on the account side, but I'm never made to feel like a suit. And I think that's just the nature of the agencies that I've worked at. So no matter what side of the industry that you're on, have fun. Get to know the people that you will get to know the people that you're working with, and they're, you know, I have come across, they've become a lot of my very good friends, because there's very smart, fun, creative people, and I think, you know, we work in the best industry in my mind, and I think have fun with it. And I think also if you're at a place and you're not having fun, don't give up. I think try something else. If it's you know, if it's a different role or a different agency, a different account, give it a chance, because I think any combination of those things completely changes things, whether it's an agency, a client, whatever you're working on. Those can quickly shift your experience. So I think give it a chance and try out different things, whether a big shop, small shop, you know,
client side,
absolutely, I think is an amazing experience. So I think those change your experience very quickly. So if you don't have a good experience off the bat, I think try something else, and don't give up on it until you do.
Okay, I would say, best advice, I would say be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think would be some really good advice that maybe I could have had early on. But anyway, I think when you're entering the industry, like we kind of spoke to, there are a ton of acronyms. It's an incredibly fast-paced industry. It's so much fun because of that. It's exciting. There's never a dull day. You're going to work intense hours. But I think that being able to, you know, you're never going to be perfectly prepared for every presentation, perfectly prepared for every meeting, because the volume is just so intense. And I think just being okay with that and being comfortable with yourself, being comfortable with the knowledge that you have, and just like letting yourself grow, letting yourself evolve is probably what I would suggest.
Yeah, I'll just build on that. I think what we do is advertising. I'm not quite sure anymore, but let's just call it advertising for the sake of, you know, just to generalize. It's a craft. Whether it's actually developing creative, building out a plan, servicing a client, there is a strategy and there's a craft to everything you do. And know that getting a job is just the first step, right? And then you want to hone that craft and get better. And if you have a desire to kind of grow, not only kind of professionally, but personally, and you really think that there's an opportunity for you to grow, as opposed to just like, I got my job, I'm good. If you really want to grow, this is the kind of industry for you. But that growth takes years, right? Don't rush it. But be prepared to work hard, grow, know that you're going to get better, and if you want to get better, and 20-ish years in, I still want to get better. If you have that curiosity, that insatiable desire to just do more and do better, then this is the thing for you. But you got to want that, and that is one of those intangibles. You can't teach it. It's just kind of, it's either it's in you or it isn't. But if it's in you, it's a great industry, a lot of fun. And yeah, like I said before, put your hand up, get ready to ride the roller coaster, and don't sweat it, and just enjoy it, work your ass off, and good things will happen. So that'd be the advice I'd give. That's what I would tell myself now.
That's great advice, and we'll end it there. Thank you so much for joining us and
Thank you.
imparting your wisdom and experience with everyone. So that's the end of the live stream. Thank you for joining us, and I'm sure if there's any questions that you have, you could probably find everyone on social or email them. Thank you so much.
I'm from Ad Standards, and for over 60 years, we've been all about doing the right thing. It's like holding the door open for someone with crutches, or someone carrying a lot of pizzas, or that sweet old lady that you see all the time. You're welcome, Mrs. Donovan. That's what we call doing the right thing. And that's pretty much what we do over at Ad Standards, by helping ensure all advertising is truthful, fair, and accurate.